Good morning, everybody. We've just gone live on this discussion of Openstreetmap, but we're going to give it a few minutes just for people to trickle in here. So bear with us, but thank you for joining us. We'll just give it a couple more minutes for people to come in here. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, good morning, everybody. My name is Benson Wilder. I'm with the Humanitarian Information Unit, which is part of the Office of the Geographer, Global Issues, here at the State Department, the U.S. State Department. We were very grateful to our colleagues who both the Global Partnerships Office here at the State Department and our colleagues at USAID who are organizing this week of events for Global Diaspora Week. They asked us to take part and do this workshop to help expose members of the diaspora, various diasporas, to Openstreetmap, which we'll be talking about during this hour. My colleague Tom Gerton is here with me from the Humanitarian Information Unit, and together we work on the MapGive project, which is the State Department's primary form of engagement with Openstreetmap. We also have Courtney Clark from the Peace Corps. We work very closely with the Peace Corps, and she'll talk a bit later about all the work that they've been doing with Openstreetmap, working through their network of Peace Corps volunteers throughout the world, and working with schools, colleges, and secondary schools domestically and internationally. We also have Kavita Gaviri, who is finishing her PhD in geography here in the United States, but is originally from Nepal, and she was very active in the mapping response for Nepal following the earthquake earlier this year, and she'll talk a bit shortly about her experiences. But just by way of introduction, for those who've never heard of Openstreetmap at all, Openstreetmap is an open and editable map of the world. It's often called the Wikipedia of maps, but it can also really more accurately be thought of the Wikipedia for map data. So anybody can look at Openstreetmap, but you can also contribute to it. And there are a number of different ways to edit and add to the map. We'll talk about some of that in brief. We got involved here at the State Department with Openstreetmap because since the Haiti earthquake in 2010, there's been an explosion in its use specifically for humanitarian response, for urgent onset disasters. But also, it's in tandem with that, Openstreetmap is being used to prepare for disasters, to make sure that there are detailed mapping data available so that you know where your key infrastructure are, or NGOs, UN agencies responding, as well as governments at the local and national levels, have access to detailed, high-quality data, which can be very useful to mitigate the effects of natural disasters and other crises before they actually take place. Openstreetmap is also widely used in a number of longer-term development type of applications, and the power of it is that you can engage with Openstreetmap at a very local level, even though a lot of what we'll be talking about today is dependent on internet connectivity. There are many tools for offline use as well, where the data can be transferred to an analog or paper-based form. Community members in various places where maybe internet access is a problem can still work offline, and then there are processes to get the data digitized and back online and into the map itself. So Openstreetmap really is a database. It is a single map that everybody edits into, so it is a crowdsourced project. But Openstreetmap can also refer to the broader movement around open data, and specifically open geographic data. And then there's also the Openstreetmap Foundation, similar to Wikipedia, where there's a Wikipedia Foundation who manages the project as a nonprofit. There's an Openstreetmap Foundation based in the UK, but we work very closely with the Humanitarian Openstreetmap team. And they are an NGO based here in the United States, but they're an international membership. And they are the focal point, as the name suggests, between the Openstreetmap community and the humanitarian community, although really they do a lot of work in the broader development sphere as well. So it really crosses the bounds of development, mitigating, preparing for disasters, recovering from large events, and being better prepared and ensuring broader resilience across the board. So with that, I think we'll play a brief video. It's 3 minutes long. Bear with me while we switch screens for the screen sharing. And then I'll ask Kavita to say a few words about her experiences. And if you have access to the chat, feel free to send us questions. Otherwise, we've posted links in the showcase in the Google chat, or for the Google Hangout. And we can follow up with everyone with additional information as well. So we're happy to be in touch during the call here or afterwards.
While Benson's loading the video, I just want to reiterate that we're all very excited to be part of this Global Diaspora Week, and Diaspora is such an important community to connect with, and it really complements the remote mapping that MapGive often focuses. And the more we connect with people who are knowledgeable of their local communities, I think the better off we'll be and the better map data will create.
Absolutely. Stand by for a moment.
Choose.
In 2010, after an earthquake in Haiti, online volunteers became part of a movement that is creating a free and open digital map of the world.
In an emergency, you just need data from wherever you are.
It's important that the information is open and available to everyone, because some situations we don't know it's going to happen. It's a surprise.
What is remote mapping?
Remote mapping is sort of an interesting new phenomenon that's happened probably since about 2010 in Haiti. We saw a real push of volunteers coming online to help create map data where none existed before.
Map data helps humanitarian efforts, not just in a crisis. It helps communities like Kibera in Nairobi, Kenya, prepare, develop, and respond to needs at the local level. It's a big job, and not every place is mapped like we may believe.
Developing or establishing data is a very huge step in kicking off the process of changing things. And that's the point at which the maps become very useful.
When the typhoon happened, we realized that there were no good maps of the Philippines, that there needed to be maps so that our personnel would know where to go and what they would find when they got there. So we partnered with the Humanitarian Openstreetmap team to help them and help us build out a base map for the Philippines.
Think of OpenStreetMap as Wikipedia for maps.
OpenStreetMap is a free and open map of the entire world. It's primarily edited by volunteers. We create everything in the commons. It's completely open, available for anyone to contribute to and anyone to use.
How do volunteers help?
The way that a volunteer can help is by looking at satellite imagery and picking out different predefined objects and saying, okay, I see a house, I can trace the edges of that house. I see a road, I can trace the line of that road. I see an edge of a forest, I can trace the edge of that forest.
MapGive is making it easier for new online volunteers to take those first steps in helping build an open, free map of the world and become digital humanitarians. Learn how to map in 3 steps. Get an OpenStreetMap account, practice mapping, then get connected with a task on the MapGive site. You'll get the skills to map. What you'll give helps communities around the world.
The value of the geographic data created in OpenStreetMap for humanitarian response has already been compelling. The amount of information that's been produced and the utility it has rendered to the humanitarian community is a game changer in humanitarian response.
For the typhoon response, we've had almost 1,600 volunteers do something like 4.5 million edits to the base map just for the Philippines. And those 1,600 volunteers represent some 3 to 4 years of dedicated mapping that one person would be able to do.
We're asking the question, what if there were more online map givers?
What can happen if we had 10 times the amount of volunteers, 50 times the amount of volunteers? How many areas could we map? How much good could we do in this process?
Let's find out how much good we can do. MapGive today.
All right. Hopefully that gave you a good overview of what we're talking about here today. So at this point, as you saw in the video and as we've discussed in brief, there's a range of applications for OpenStreetMap. The unique power of it in a crisis response is that because OpenStreetMap can be edited by anyone and because it's crowdsourced, where even a relatively small number of people, 10 or 20, can add quite a bit of data to a map of, say, a city or even a small country in a very short period of time. Haiti response, Haiti was mapped in near entirety within 48 hours. So you can see the value of that in crisis response in places where maybe there are detailed maps available, but they may only be available to militaries or maybe to private interests. And even if the maps themselves are available, to have access to the data underneath the maps could be a challenge. So that makes it very hard for any organizations who actually need to create custom maps or do analysis or do assessment of logistics, for example, or access for humanitarian assistance. Without access to the data, it's very hard to do anything. So that's why OpenStreetMap has been used so widely and is growing in its use. So we do often get involved in supporting mapping, often in conjunction with the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team after a disaster has struck. Even though, of course, the best case is that we have everywhere in the world mapped in detail now, or as soon as possible, so that the data is available everywhere, because you never know where the next event will happen. But it's a big world. The world keeps changing, so there's always the need to keep the map updated. Essentially, that's why here at MapGive and with our partners in the Peace Corps and other organizations, we're really focused on trying to grow the crowd, grow the community around OpenStreetMap, both at the local level and in the sphere of international volunteers who can contribute from wherever they are as digital volunteers. So I'd like to turn it over to our colleague Kavita to talk a bit about what she did in the wake of the Nepal earthquake.
Thank you, Benson. My experience with OpenStreetMapping started with post-earthquake event when there was a, the event was organized by MapGive and OpenStreet team at the Red Cross. And being a remote sensing expert, the process itself was not new to me, like, digitizing and that the technical aspect, but I was not very much aware about this humanitarian OpenStreetMapping. So it was, the first of all, that information, though we are the expert and we know so much about this team, there was a gap. I felt that, the availability and how the experts could contribute. And so being my own area of expertise, I was very much interested in that. And after that, we organized a couple of events in collaboration with Peace Corps. And during that process, after the earthquake, there are so many other geospatial experts from Nepal. The Nepalese diaspora were working on so many different aspects, like fundraising, providing the medical support, and volunteers going back. And there is a group of geospatial experts who were like, what can we do? Is there a mapping stuff we could do? And OpenStreetMapping was one of the way people could contribute. And you want to connect. It is also emotional. I felt that in some part people want to get connected. Not everybody wants to go to raise funds or not, and this has given some kind of sense of community as well, I felt. And because of that, like, we came together, and we are still working on individual projects as a professional work, and then we are always like, okay, I'm working on this, how can I help? And at the same time, we are promoting OpenStreetMap in general, not only for the humanitarian activity. And the other thing is, there are many volunteers who have approached me who wants to know more because they know the basics of mapping, and they were like, I think there was a question earlier, since it is a crowdsource, how do we maintain the data quality? And there are lots of validation stuff we could do, and there were like lots of feedback about the background image is not good in some of the areas because that area has never been explored as a mapping priority. So, and we have some of the map, high resolution map, which was lying here, and then there was need. So, the biggest thing is how to connect that resources so that it is easily available. And I think it has a big, it has lots of prospect. And one of the things I'm trying to do now is, to maintain that network so that we can contribute more. Now the process has slowed down. And another thing I'm kind of trying to do, but I haven't done yet, is talk with the professor. I have been talking, but try to involve OpenStreet in a syllabus so that the students could get exposed to it, and they can every GIS remote sensing syllabus has an assignment, and if they could map certain part, I think this is a process how to recruit more and more volunteer, and with a more, they are getting training, more specialized training in that area, and new generation will bring new method and more efficient way, if we never know, to the field. So I plan to continue working on this, and I think my interest, the next interest, or what I would like to continue doing is, we mapped there were lots of objects created, but we don't know what is happening right now with that. Is anybody using that data? Has it been institutionalized? I would like to, after the next, for me, next step I would be interested to know is trying to institutionalize that, and even organize another big event using more Nepalese diaspora in DC, and see, okay, this is, and promoting at the same time, trying to institutionalize the Nepalese mapping diaspora, and then we can move further to South Asia. I don't know. That is my something I want to go do in maybe 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. So yeah. Any questions, comments?
So we may we have the chat feature open, but not everyone may be watching live.
Okay, yeah.
But I'll comment a bit on what Kavita said. Thank you for that. I think we have seen more and more the role that diaspora are playing, and Secretary Kerry, even in his remarks at the kickoff event for Global Diaspora Week last week, talk more generally about the essential, and many people, of course, have been talking about this during this week. That's why Global Diaspora Week exists. But Secretary Kerry highlighted the role that diaspora play in building the resilience in their home communities, in their home countries, and particularly when there is an emergency. They are often among the first responders. They are not only sending money, organizing efforts for assistance, perhaps traveling back to their home countries, but they're also in a position to educate the countries, the communities that they are living in abroad about their homes, their cultures, the unique challenges that are being faced, and of course can speak with personal experience and advocate for a better response. So Openstreetmap, I think, offers one unique track within that to add particular value in terms of organizing and advocating and raising awareness, but also in terms of the map itself, adding that local knowledge and the local detail that Kavita mentioned. Also, in the showcase that we've shared here, we have some links as well, so I just want to highlight those. There is one animation showing the scale of the data that was created, sort of a zoomed out view of Nepal, and you can see all the roads that were traced and added to the map just over about the period of a month or so, and much more has been added since then. And there's also a graph animation for West Africa, since OpenStreetMap and the OpenStreetMap community was very involved in the response to Ebola starting last year, but it's ongoing, and the data are still being used for a number of response and recovery efforts. Thankfully, we're shifting mostly into the recovery phase now. And in that case, map data were very useful and necessary because the three affected countries, again, had a lack of good digital maps, and logistics were a key challenge in terms of even traveling to and finding villages, remote locations where people were contracting Ebola and required treatment. And even in this phase, there's a lot of work going on by community health workers who are doing surveillance for a number of diseases to build stronger health systems overall. And having detailed road data, but in some cases structure level data as well, is incredibly useful for health work. And of course, not all these data need to be public, but having just a basis of something that's physically observable can be very useful in consultations and outreach. Did anyone of my colleagues want to add anything else? Who didn't want to ramble on too much?
Well, yeah, as Kavita mentioned, I think that it's an ongoing worthy challenge for us to institutionalize more how the data is being used. Originally, for these mapping requests, almost all these requests originate from people either on the ground needing the map data in the first place. But usually, you know, due to so many priorities, it's a little bit harder to get feedback exactly how the data was used. In addition, there might be, you know, second and third order effects of having good mapping data that's harder to document. But it's something I think we should, as a community, should continually strive to do a better job capturing metrics and good stories.
And we should also mention that OpenStreetMap, because of the nature of its license, we're talking mostly about how it's being used in humanitarian development efforts, but there are a number of private sector applications as well. A number of businesses are increasingly switching to or adopting OpenStreetMap, both as sort of within their own platforms, but also in terms of making sure that their locations are in OpenStreetMap and available, because it's being used increasingly for navigation, not just here in the United States, and in Europe, but elsewhere. You know, there may be a range of different interests for the participants who are logging here or watching this online. And I just note that you know, there is the possibilities are endless in terms of the applications of OpenStreetMap.
Yeah, and especially, you know, I would like to add on that, especially in the developing country, and especially, you know, Nepal, you know, being a geographer and, you know, knowing the area, it's such a small country and it doesn't even need a huge effort. And I'm personally involved currently with one of the NSF grant which requires the social survey. And I'm trying to train my volunteers there who are doing the survey that at least you need to have the paper where it is located so that we can digitize it later, because it has given me an opportunity. I have done questionnaire survey in the past, but that aspect never occurred to me because it was more like, since they don't have access to all the sophisticated technology, how could we map? And we're more relying on GPS and that kind of stuff. But now what I have given them is I have given them a paper map they can print, and I just stress, I told them, just trace them so that we can, later on you can just have a reference and do that online. And that is also, and that is my, the agency I'm working with is a demographic, like they have not done much of a geospatial aspect, but they were like, oh, we could do it to the other field. So it is like, I don't know how they are going to use. And I have been approached by a gentleman who participated in one of the mapping events we organized at Diaspora, and he is mapping biofuel plants they have planted so that they can keep track of, so that they won't be. Sometime in a developing countries, you all have worked there, that the leaders are more forthcoming. As a implementer, it is difficult to track if there is a duplication or not. But if we have a map, we could always follow, and then we can track. There are the opportunities huge, and it's just like, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and I'll just add off of what Kavita was saying. Again, I'm Courtney Clark. I work at the Peace Corps, and I work closely with MapGive, and co-hosted a mapping event earlier this year with Kavita, which was fantastic. And using OpenStreetMap, generating data on OpenStreetMap has really been a game changer for a lot of our volunteers in the field. So if you're new to the Peace Corps, we're an agency of the federal government. We have about 6,800 volunteers in 65 developing countries around the world that have invited us in, and our volunteers are largely working in rural communities. A lot of them also on public health, which if you know anything about health, which everyone does, or even epidemiology, it's very difficult to do any sort of analysis or get a good understanding of a health sort of situation in any community if you don't have good geographic data. And so that's been a struggle for our volunteers and then their host country colleagues in the past, is just having access to data that they can use to sort of drive their project decision making and their evaluation process. And OpenStreetMap has really changed that in a big way for a lot of our volunteers. So now we have quite a few volunteers in host communities who are building maps on OpenStreetMap together, and then using that data to fight malaria, to sort of pilot monitoring and evaluation techniques of different malaria prevention strategies, using the maps to promote ecotourism, to sort of promote and amplify small local businesses. And so it's been huge for us, and we love that it's free and that it's open as well. And then I also wanted to, there were a few questions on the chat, and I wanted to make sure we verbally answered those, because I know not everyone can see the chat. So I'll just do that really quick. So we have Sarah Gallagher, who asked how to find the video that we showed. All of those videos can be found at just mapgive.state.gov, and there's also other video tutorials there that I encourage anyone viewing or seeing this video afterwards to check out. And then Sarah also had a question about managing the quality of the data that we crowdsource. And there's a few options for that. So when we're looking at excuse me, I'm sorry, I had to be outside for this. So when we're looking at the remote mapping, once a remote map is completed in the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team tasking manager, then more experienced mappers will go in and they'll actually validate the edits that have been made, just do a double check. And then also, it's very important in all of these projects, sort of the next step after the crowdsourcing is that a local field team or a local mapping community will actually ground truth the map. and then also add in their detailed local knowledge. And so that, you know, the crowdsourced mapping, it's a really key piece, but I would say it's just like the beginning, maybe 10 to 15%. And then really like the bulk of the really rich data comes from local community members. And the crowdsourced mapping just makes their jobs and their lives easier, especially in areas that don't have good internet connection. And I'm really curious, maybe Kavita, Tom, Benson, you guys have some thoughts on this? If a member of the diaspora were watching this today, what's like one thing that they could do to get involved? Like what should they do next, I guess? Yeah.
I think, well, thanks, Courtney. So I think the first step, if you're interested, is to check out our website, and there are videos there, because there are, on top of the video we played at the top of the hour here, there are tutorials that give you a good walkthrough on the remote mapping process as a starting point. But there are also links to the activities of all of the organizational partners, including Humanitarian Openstreetmap team, colleagues at the World Bank, American Red Cross, Peace Corps, and many others, and a range of examples of all the different applications which we've only just scratched the surface on and been talking about so far today. Also, you can get in touch with us. We'll have our contact information here for Courtney at Peace Corps and for us. And a lot of what we'd like to do is just connect people who have an interest in mapping wherever, but certainly perhaps in their home countries if you're a member of the diaspora, with people who may already be doing that, with mapping communities who have a vested interest or are working with it. So that might be one starting point.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Email us, mapgive@state.gov. We're aware of a lot of good mapping projects, and we'd be happy to connect you with a good one.
And if you are really seized, then there is a listserv for Humanitarian Openstreetmap team, which has thousands of subscribers, and there's sort of an open running dialogue, and people climb in there and ask for ideas and brainstorming, technical assistance. So that's a community happily connected.
Yeah, I think just getting started and just promoting this, sending links to people. And one of the things I think I want to I try to say when I'm talking about OpenStreetMapping is you don't need to be a mapper, you don't need to have a background in geography, you don't need to have you don't need to know anything, as long you just need to have a laptop, or even if you like when I was talking with I think Charlotte for that hot interview, I said that I think I have recruited more people than created objects in OpenStreetMapping, because it was like I was just promoting it and people are doing it, and there is people have approached, and I think like at least in next few months I would like to one of the biggest thing I would like to do is organize a mapping event with the larger group of Nepalese diaspora with much preparation, because there has been individuals asking, everybody has a different need, so just promoting it and just letting people know that it's not only for the experts, it's only everybody, even the high school, like Courtney has been training the kids, and everybody can do it. It's just we need to. Yeah.
On that note, if we want to give everybody a target to work toward and something to help motivate you, we do have a large event coming up in just about a month's time. That will be it's a series of events that will be global. So Geography Awareness Week is recognized around the world. A number of groups, including National Geographic, have supported that over the years. So last year we inaugurated OpenStreetMap Geo Week, or OSM Geo Week for short. That happens during the same week in conjunction with Geography Awareness Week, which is actually also International Education Week. So we're working with our colleagues here at the State Department from the Educational and Cultural Affairs Bureau to cross-promote and amplify a series of events focused on mapping and really the educational aspect. So that means both the power of maps and OpenStreetMap to expose people to geographic thinking and new technologies, and also in the process of learning them, create data, or at least learn a process where you can contribute data to all the applications we're talking about here. So we'll share the link for that as well, but it's osmgeoweek.org. And the whole idea and what we did last year in the first annual event is that we set it up so that anybody could sponsor an event. We have all the tools available, organizational tools, logistics, the basic guides that you would need. We're sponsoring a range of mapping activities ourselves, but also leaving it up to individual schools, community groups, NGOs, any institution, any local organization, a church group, or anything like that. You could have an event that could be as small as 5 people or 10 people, or as big as 50 or 100. And we'll have everybody who signs up on a global map showing where all these events are happening. And during that whole week, some things will be happening simultaneously, some will just be spread out across the week. We'll all be trying to contribute to the same map and learn and teach each other. We work closely with the people who are involved with 2 other projects, Learn OSM and Teach OSM, and those are open curricula, as the name suggests, for learning OpenStreetMap. They go into a bit more detail than the videos and the tools we have on our website. And Teach OSM, which is geared for what Kavika mentioned, really building OpenStreetMap and the tools and the training around it into curricula at the primarily now at the college level, but increasingly at the secondary school level as well. So what we are excited about for OSM GeoWeek is having people all around the world in touch with each other, contributing to the same map. Maybe we'll have a college here in the United States mapping the same place and at the same time with the university. Last year's university in Bangladesh, they partnered with George Washington University here, just down the road, during related events during the year. And I think, getting back to what Tom said, having people be able to tell their stories during that time as well, in terms of why they're creating the data, what the uses are going to be, and really showing the value of this project.
Yeah, so I think it's just interesting, depending on where you look around the world, there's already some strong OpenStreetMap local communities. There's quite a few in South America, Nepal, Ukraine, and other places, including Africa. And a lot of them are self-organizing. They have maybe their own local Facebook page or a website even. So I think there's lots of potential connections where Diaspora could easily connect with these local communities. And ourselves in Peace Corps, we're definitely thinking about how to better support these local communities and connect them with one another.
We also did a small event similar to this, another hangout on there a few weeks back for members of the Sierra Leone diaspora. More than a year after the initial Ebola response, there's still a lot of work and a lot of mapping to be done in Sierra Leone. So just as one example, I think there are opportunities to kind of focus in on individual country-level diaspora groups, but also to work with each other and learn from each other. And you might see an application in one country that you might want to adapt or use in your own home nation. So if we can wrap up a little early, but I wanted to make sure that if Kavita or Courtney, if you have anything else to add.
People post questions?
I don't think everybody has access to the chat. Is that right, Courtney?
Maybe they could post it, but they can't see it.
Right.
If someone has any questions, they could post the questions and we could verbally answer them.
Right.
But maybe while we give people a chance to post questions, we could have, final round.
Yeah.
Of summary, final thoughts.
Any final? Oh, you know what? Well, what I'll actually do, we'll see if any other questions come in. we'll just show you a couple of the graphics that are in the showcase, but we'll just switch over to them now.
Share.
Switch over. Bear with us, technical difficulties. Just to give you one example. Oops. Sorry here. I'll show you one example of a map that was created in Sierra Leone, for Sierra Leone. Sorry, technical difficulties. Well, rather than have you watch us stumble around, we'll share all these links out. We can post them on the Eventbrite page as well, just in case you have trouble finding them, and Google Plus page. But other than that, any final comments from our friends at Peace Corps or from you, Kavita?
No, I was just checking the Geographic Week information. Is the Kathmandu Living Lab doing particularly like?
So they were actually, yeah. Did you mentioned Kathmandu Living Labs? I think we touched on this, but Kathmandu Living Labs, we've spoken about the importance of local communities. They're somewhat unique. As the name suggests, in Kathmandu.
I cannot hear you clearly.
Oh, okay. How about now?
Yes.
So, just to highlight one unique actor in terms of local communities around mapping, Kathmandu Living Labs actually started a project, a World Bank Global Facility for Disaster Reduction Support, and they actually worked with some support from us here at the State Department and our colleagues at USAID and students at George Washington University to do an initial detailed map of Kathmandu and the immediate Kathmandu area. And as we've talked about here, that was the start of the process, so sort of that first 15% Courtney mentioned, where then Kathmandu Living Labs organized community members to take the base map and then add the attribution, add the types of structures that had been visible from space, the types of facilities with a focus on health facilities and schools, the specific types of roofs and building materials, since the whole focus of the project was actually earthquake preparedness, getting a better sense of the risks in various neighborhoods and how prone they would be to significant damage from an earthquake. So a lot of that planning had been done and filtered into the process. The quake was severe, of course. Outside of Kathmandu was hardest hit, but Kathmandu itself at least had some preparedness plans that were supported in part by the work done with Openstreetmap. But Kathmandu Living Labs went on, has been involved in a number of different mapping applications and application of various technologies in Nepal, and were naturally situated when the quake hit to be the focal point for the global response and the global mapping support. So they played that role of identifying priorities, interfacing with other NGOs, UN agencies, the government themselves, government responding agencies in Nepal, to try to guide the efforts, since it was the largest response ever in terms of volunteers, more than probably 7,000, and a good subset of those who were doing a significant amount of mapping, some of whom will be adding an edit here and there. So again, that is a unique example, but one we're seeing more and more of, both private actors as well as nonprofit or NGO actors who are galvanizing local communities that could be local in terms of one town or city, or more at the national or regional level.
I'll be interested to meet with Nomaraz during that time, because I have not met him, and that is something, it will be, just put name and face together, and just, I would love to see I would love to know what their next step is and how we can as a diaspora community here, how we can contribute on that process. So
yeah, so we're looking. The director of Cabin Living Labs will be here soon, actually during the Geo Week events, and looking forward to having him and Kavita connect. But I think that's a good model, and to kind of close on what we're talking about during this hour. That is exactly what we'd like to see, and that's what we hope will come out of this initial engagement. So if you're a member of Diaspora and you think that there's you want to be involved yourself, or you think project, you have a full-time job and you don't have time to be involved, but you think there's something happening in the whole country that could benefit from better mapping data.
Sure, and just one final remark from me, at least. I firmly can't. I believe this can happen without diaspora involvement, and that the diaspora is the key to linking, for example, our institutions who are really putting a lot of resources and energy into this with local communities who want access to the data and have to be a critical part of all of this process. And I don't think we can wait, we're really lucky. I grew up in the US and I just have access to map data. I can pull out my phone, it's just there, someone else did it for me, companies that can make money. And that's not happening in the rest of the world. And I don't think we can wait for companies to do it. It will never happen. And so we have to sort of, step up now and start making this data accessible. And, even if that's an hour of remote mapping, that's something that's a really good start. Yeah.
And adding to that, since I have seen both sides, lived and seen both sides of the world, and especially in the developing countries like Nepal, what Kathmandu Living Lab is doing great, but they have one organization, team of 10 people or 100 people could do just whatever they could do is limited, and the diaspora community can we can see the global picture and then see, okay, this this area has been very widely mapped, giving my first experience working in GIS related stuff was in early 2000. There was a valley mapping project. Kathmandu has been mapped so many times, but it is the information is not accessible, and again we are doing the same stuff, and then there are so many areas in Nepal which has never been mapped. Just trying to get back to that resource where, and especially with the open source, it is open and people can access it more easily. That institutionalization process is important, and just promoting more and more local organizations. Diaspora play an important role because they can see the global picture and just connect that would be good.
This session has been really great, insightful. I learned a lot, and I just want to encourage everyone tuning in to just start mapping. Just go to mapgive.state.gov, get acquainted with the learning materials, and just dive in. Then go to osmgeoweek.org. We're going to be adding a lot more events, and we already have 3 projects up there from Peace Corps and USAID, and we're going to be adding more projects. You could even submit your own events. They don't have to be, it could be small or big. It could just be a group of 5 of your friends, or you could go to your local library or any community center and have a bigger event as well. And we can connect you with great projects, and maybe we could even work with you in creating a new project as well.
Yeah, do one thing after you watch this, whether live or on the archive. Go to the site, create an Openstreetmap account for yourself, and make an edit. Don't be shy. You'd be amazed. It's a lot of fun, and you can, it's amazing to see how quickly you can make a difference in the map. So, with that, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thanks to our guests.
Amazing.
And we hope to hear from everybody soon.
Yeah. Thank you.